Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, 3 out of 4 Montgomery County students fail their Algebra 1 final exam. What should happen to the Confederate statue in Rockville? Should Prince George's County move out of Upper Marlboro and go into Largo? And our final topic, handicapping the presidential races. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by Elbridge James, president of Progressive Maryland, Maryland National Republican Committee woman Nicolee Ambrose, former Republican candidate for delegate Uncapher, and education activist Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Once again, the math proficiency of Montgomery County Public School students is in the news, as 3 out of 4 students fail their Algebra 1 final exam. Cynthia, School Board President Patricia O'Neill touts the fact that this year's results were better than last year's, but she finally admits she doesn't have a solution for the poor performance. What do you think?
Well, here's the odd thing, or one of the odd things about this, is that 83% of those same high school students pass algebra as a course. And so there's some kind of disconnect between the test and the other evaluations that teachers are giving students for Algebra 1.
It means they don't retain it.
Well, it's only 25% of their entire grade. Some kids may not be motivated to do well. It's also a lot more material contained in the test than in the exams that they take during the course year. It's a more complicated problem than we know, and some are suggesting that they should do away with the test for now until they figure out why.
All right, well, let's go to Robin on that, because neither the school board or MCPS have a clue how to fix it. As Cynthia is suggesting, they're going to do away with the test altogether. That's just terrific. No accountability whatsoever.
You betcha. The dirty little secret that Montgomery County has is that most of the time the parents have been doing a whole lot of the teaching. And what has happened is that because the demographics in Montgomery County have changed, there are fewer parents who are able to do that amount of the teaching. Most of the parents that I know in Montgomery County did at least half the teaching for their kids. And when you have more parents who aren't college educated, it becomes more and more difficult for those parents to do that amount of teaching. Montgomery County has been taking credit for the students for years, and what they're not addressing is now that they have to do more teaching, they're not coming up to the plate.
Elbridge, what is the answer here to get students to actually learn the subjects that they're supposed to be taught?
I think you need a process where we stop teaching to the test. We find out when you teach to the test in terms, and then you have a final, which is all-encompassing. The students aren't prepared for that, or in fact, as we have parents, or we encourage our communities to work with our students and our teachers and maybe have additional teacher aides and things of this nature in the classroom, then you can turn around and having a more successful educational system and kids. But if you continue to have kids that learn for the test, then they're not prepared for that final.
So newsflash, Algebra 1 is not rocket science. So how about we admit we have some failing schools here, and I think the answer for that is school choice. Let parents choose where their kids can go to school and get a real education where they can pass what's the equivalent of really 8th or freshman year of high school grade math.
We don't have fully failing schools. Our schools are some of the best in the country. It's been shown on different reports.
That's overrated and that's untrue.
Well, I'm not arguing that, but there are challenges in every school system. School choice is not going to guarantee.
But isn't that an opportunity? If you're having a series of year in, year out, continual failures in the public school system, shouldn't the kids who want to learn and the parents who want their children to learn have some choice here?
All kids want to learn.
I want to go back to Robin's point because I think it has a lot of validity. And I think the school system on some level does recognize this, because starting last year, they began to focus more on doing better at the foundational skills on the elementary school level, in making sure the teachers were trained better and focusing more on professional development so that the teachers would do better at it and make sure that the kids, before they move up to pre-algebra and algebra, get the foundational skills. This is going to take some time.
In the districts where you have parents, one of our districts, I know I was in the zip codes, like the highest educated zip code in the United States. The scores aren't bad there. Things aren't going downhill there because the parents are still able, you still have parents who are able to teach their kids. The scores are dropping in places where the parents are less able to do that work.
We need schools that serve our children. And if
Exactly.
children are demoralized by a 75% failure rate on freshman year math, that sets their whole high school career off on a bad note.
But they're
Unacceptable.
They're not getting failing grades overall for the subject. They're failing.
It just sounds
one
like you're covering
exam.
up a problem,
No,
a bigger
no,
problem
I'm
than
just,
though.
I'm just stating. I'm just clarifying.
No, I understand,
They're not
but it
failing
sounds
the
like
course,
that's a
they're
bigger
failing
problem.
The final exam.
But it's a symbol of the fact that they're not learning a full year's subject matter, and they're not retaining it when they're being asked to bring it out later on in life. We got to go on to our next topic. This is the school issue is one that we talk about all year long because MCPS is so important to Montgomery County, and it takes up 55% of our budget. We'll come back to it. Part of the national debate that followed the tragic shooting death of an African American church in Charleston, South Carolina, has focused on the continued presence of Confederate statues and symbols. Initially, the debate was about the exposition of the Confederate flag, but more recently, the debate has touched on the continued presence of war memorials honoring the Confederacy. Now, this debate became local when the City Council of Rockville debated whether to remove a Confederate statue from the front of the county district court building. Elbridge, is it time for all symbols of the Confederacy to go?
From the county courthouse, yes, it has to go. It should never have been there this long. Understanding when it was put in place, I think in 1913 or somewhere around that era, to satisfy some of the issues with white citizens, never asked black citizens that they want that statue there. Now we're at an era where, in fact, those symbols are being hijacked by the worst elements of this country. We understand that, in fact, we have a number of citizens that have heritage and have people who have fought on for the Confederacy. It does not belong at a county seat like that. It needs to be in another place. It should have been removed a long time ago.
Nicolee, there are many that touch on this same fact that Elbridge was pointing out, that this may be just a case of revisionist history, and that it's a correction that is long overdue.
I think we're dramatically oversimplifying our nation's history with this trend. I also think that there's no piece of fabric assembled on a sewing machine that are responsible for someone committing mass murder. That is a psychological problem, and in this case, this was a deeply troubled man who told people in his community and no one reported it. So I'm concerned that we are focusing on the wrong thing with this mass murder in Charleston, and we instead, I believe, need to focus on mental illness and those causes.
Let's pick up on something that Elbridge touched on, which is that Confederate emblems, particularly the flag, is being adopted by some of and hijacked to make a racial statement that they are anti-black.
So let me just say that when you try to ignore and forget your history, you're doomed to repeat it. If not, make it worse with the tools we have at our disposal now. And it concerns me that we are repurposing the history of this country and only ascribing horrible and negative motives to the past. Because there were many other issues involved with it.
We'll go to you next.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with examining this.
Sure.
And
Examine
and
away.
I agree with Elbridge on it does not belong at the county courthouse. The inscription on the statue points to the glorification of the Confederacy and the thin gray line. And if you're glorifying the Confederacy, which was a symbol for institutional racism, it does not belong on a county courthouse grounds. It can go into a cemetery that contains the Confederate dead as part of a private historical site, but it does not belong on a government-sanctioned site.
So the only purpose, I'm just asking, of our nation's history and the battle, they had nothing to do with states' rights? That's nowhere in the
And
debate?
the states' rights that the state's right that the South was trying to defend was the right to own people as slaves.
No,
It
that
was.
is not
No,
the
it was-
only
that is
purpose.
the
I am a
basis.
huge,
Basis
huge
of the
Republican. I
Confederate
love
economy.
Abraham Lincoln, but there were many other issues. We have these issues of states' rights coming up today in court rulings.
I want to hear from
I think that's an
Robin
important
to wrap
thing
this
to
up.
examine.
Okay, first of all, when Kansas was lost, that was the beginning of the Confederacy. Kansas was lost because of the slavery issue. But the other issue is that 600,000 men died for the Union. I don't see any Union statues in Maryland, and Maryland never seceded from the Union. The same is true of Kentucky. There are numerous numbers of Confederate statues, and none for the Union. And I think that that really has to be addressed as well.
Well, I'm sorry that we don't have more time to discuss this, because obviously there's a lot of passion on both sides, and there are nuances that really need to be explored. We'll have to take this up at a later date. When we come back from this short break, should Prince George's County move the county government to Largo? And where did the presidential candidate stand in the new national polls?
Brother.
And welcome back. Prince George's County Council members are considering moving the county offices out of Upper Marlboro and closer to the transportation hubs of Largo, near the Beltway and rail service. Nicolee, Upper Marlboro, it may be a backwater, but has been the county seat of Prince George's County for 300 years. So why is the council thinking of moving, and should they?
So it's fascinating if you peel back this onion, because County Executive Baker happens to live in Cheverly. And you know what? Largo's a lot closer than Upper Marlboro to his home. He's also done things like gotten developers to back him and trying to extend his term till 2022, which fortunately was rejected by Prince George's voters. And you know, coincidentally, the PG government has been buying up buildings in Largo since the 1990s. Interesting stuff.
So Robin, what's wrong with Upper Marlboro? I mean, why don't they just extend Metro from Suitland Avenue to Upper Marlboro, and then people would want to go there?
Well, this is kind of a big hammer. First of all, I don't think people are going to want to go to New Carrollton because the Purple Line's there, and I don't think people are going to necessarily want to go to Upper Marlboro on the train. If you want to improve public transportation, you have to improve your bus system. There's no other way to do it.
You're missing the point.
I'm not going to be traveling on the...
Upper Marlboro is poorly served by public transportation.
And if you put a train in, it'll be 2030 before it actually does anything. Not to mention the $1 billion it'll cost.
Well, but what's wrong with spurring economic development in a region of Prince George's County, which right now doesn't
Having a bridge
see.
to nowhere is not going to spur economic development, except for the immediate jobs that come out of
Prince
that.
George's County needs smart growth and smart development. This is not a governmental entity, and now looking at the residential and business sector, especially the business sector is a critical part to the development of Prince George's County. You can't always depend on government. You need to have business going. And so what I would ask is that the county government, in fact, work with entrepreneurs and business entities to have smart growth and a smart business plan that they probably can get state funding and or support.
Look, I think the issue that the county government is trying to hide is the fact that they didn't have the foresight to take Metro there when the Metro system was being planned. The county seat, just like Rockville is the county seat of Montgomery County, the county seat has been in Upper Marlboro for 300 years. They are poorly served by transportation, and they deserve better transportation, not government playing checkers with official buildings and money.
And I think we shouldn't meddle in the affairs of Prince George's County.
Correct.
I don't want people in Prince George's County deciding what we do here in Montgomery County.
But I would like to point out that this is cronyism at its finest, because this is, once again, the same county executive Baker who's proposing this was the same guy who proposed a 15% tax hike that contradicted their county law. This is the same one who tried to put a 50% tax on cell phone bills. All these were rejected, thankfully, and reconfigured by some of his county council. But this is just cronyism. This is just him making himself and his friends happy.
Well, but here's my concern. There's a huge infrastructure in Upper Marlboro of county government office buildings already. There is the county courthouse, which is mammoth. It is twice the size of Montgomery County's courthouse. The district court is large, and if you move the county offices out of there, you are not going to have any economic development in that region because it's poorly served by transportation, both by travel, by car, by bus, and there is no rail. The county is thinking short-sighted on this.
Well, they should do a
You
better
wanna-
job. I really don't like to opine on affairs that are in
Someone
another
else's.
jurisdiction.
Sure you do. We
No,
all love doing it. That's
Except
why
for
we're
the
on this show.
except for national politics.
What they need to do is elect some Republicans, because obviously they've got a one-party monopoly that is totally failing.
Well, I don't know. Nicolee, to be fair, when Metro was being planned, Prince George's County did have a Republican delegation in the county council. There has been poor planning from
When
the very
Metro was
beginning.
being planned, the entire region was so different that it's almost unimaginable. I was in college then. This was at the end of the building of the Metro. And Rockville, I had a roommate from Rockville who lived with me in D.C. because it was so far out.
But
Rockville was the outer limits.
Robin, if you recall, the master plans that were being drafted in the 60s and 70s predicted pretty carefully and closely the population of Montgomery County in the year 2000.
But they
This
didn't
is
know
the whole
about
po-
government
this is the
contracting.
whole
They
point.
really didn't know that
I'm
was
sure
going to
they
explode
did.
the way it did. No, it didn't, because Reagan made a huge difference. The area is so much more affluent than it was then. It was
I think you're
unimaginable.
wrong. I think they had the numbers pretty well. They just didn't want to spend the money to get there. I think that was the problem.
And what they also didn't recognize is that not everybody was going to go into the district and work and go out.
But
The-
that
the
was the whole
whole-
rails and spokes.
Yes, and that's not
Planning.
that's not as relevant anymore.
Well, they'd be coming here to, if we lower the taxes, they could come to Montgomery County to work.
You're going to have the last word on this because we chewed this subject up far longer than it deserved. In a surprising turn of events for Democrats, a newly released Quinnipiac University poll, I love saying that, Quinnipiac, has Hillary Clinton trailing 3 Republican candidates, Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, and Marco Rubio. Cynthia, is there any reason to take these polls seriously in July of 2015?
Yeah, well, of course, because what the heck else are we going to talk about? But I just want to point out 3 things. This poll was only dealing with Virginia, Iowa, and Colorado. This was not a national poll. So
So you're saying that
that's how serious we can take it.
Well, you're saying
Take
that Senator Clinton is weak in at least 3 jurisdictions.
Yes, Iowa, which has a few electoral votes.
But it's also the first primary. It's also very important.
And they all happen to be swing states. Imagine that.
yeah,
But
they're
there are
all
also
swing-
states where,
and it's
let's face it,
so
Iowa.
early.
Wait,
It's
wait,
so incredibly early.
Wait a minute. You're just trying to get out of the question.
Yeah, he is.
Does the unexpected weakness of Secretary Clinton mean that Bernie Sanders has a better shot at becoming the nominee?
I'm looking at Bernie and Donald Trump to have their third-party candidacy. Okay, that's how serious I take that poll. And in fact, in Iowa, the last presidential election, when they came out, that winner didn't even win the Republican candidacy. A lot of things could happen between now and then. No, and in fact, I had to look at their school to figure out where it was and what other things they covered. They did cover some nice things, but this is what you call a blimp. This is a sort of a little pigeonhole or something of that nature. No, and it has no effect, though I do hope that it takes my candidate to say, I need to do better.
And your candidate is Senator Clinton?
Correct.
Now, in 2008, there was this presumption that the more liberal candidate, and that was Barack Obama, who just happened to win Iowa, was going to be a blip on the screen.
However.
And what happened?
However, there was a pollster who did a really good scientifically based poll
Correct.
who did
Correct.
predict Barack Obama. And that pollster didn't just make random calls to people who said they were voters. They went through the voter rolls first and then called people who were actually voters.
I want to go to Nicolee on this. I mean, how delicious for you all must it be to have a poll of any kind that shows a Republican candidate beating Senator Clinton?
Multiple Republican candidates. We've got a great bench. Really, we've got a great lineup of folks. We have governors who have done real things, gotten great things accomplished in their states, turned around their economies, have great records of accomplishment, and I wouldn't want to be a Democrat just for the sake of how weak the bench is. So I'm thrilled
You've got
that our
Donald Trump
candidates.
too.
Well,
Okay, yes.
he's very entertaining, you know?
Yes, he is.
We are all entertained.
Yes,
so,
he is.
yes, but
You
love
know,
our bench.
Look, whenever you have outlier candidates, whether it was Donald Trump in this election, or the former head of the Democratic National Committee, who was leading at one point many years ago, these candidates spark debate and they spark attention and focus on the races. So they're excellent bellwethers as to what the popular
But now you have
opinions are.
a lot of polarization in our country. And so
Elbridge.
you have a number of people that will in fact rally around those outliers and then get turned off to the national election. That is a possibility you can't ignore. We need to have candidates that will bring us more together than take us apart. You have excellent candidates in your party, but they need that opportunity and they need some of your base to listen to them. If your base does not listen to them, repeat will occur.
Well, who do you think's good in the Republican field, Elbridge?
I love that.
I got you. So many good candidates, you can't even name one.
Elbridge loves Donald Trump.
Yeah, I do.
So
I'm a
we've
Bernie
got,
Sanders fan for the
Okay.
same reason.
we have our first Republican presidential debate on August 6th in Cleveland. I'll be there. So everyone tune in. Watch our great lineup of folks.
Who are going to be the
I believe it's the
participants?
top 10. So I think they're looking at the top 10 by polling numbers, and each network gets to choose what their parameters for who gets on stage. We at the RNC chose the guidelines and how many debates there would be to try to limit the chaos from last time and have it a little more directed.
with
But
so
the
many
network
candidates,
gets to choose
how do you
the
read
parameters.
through some of these outliers? There's some interesting candidates. I heard George Pataki speak the other day.
Yep.
And now George Pataki's been out of office for at least 8 years, and what an articulate guy, a thoughtful guy, and he probably will be overlooked by many of the popular polls. And candidates.
I think it makes sense, though. Actually, I have a lot of respect for Pataki, and I think that the thing about Pataki is now is not the time to peak. You know, President Muskie never happened. This you wait. I think Pataki. It makes a whole lot of sense to wait for people to wait for the better candidate.
Well, this wasn't supposed to be an endorsement of any one candidate. It was just to be fun to talk about who's going to win a year and a half before the election. Stay tuned for parting shots when we come back from a short break. And now, welcome back for parting shots, Nicolee Ambrose.
I am deeply disturbed by the Planned Parenthood videos of selling baby parts, and the sad thing is this is not a one-time incident. We're now seeing price lists from 1999 of baby parts. The Washington Times had a great story this week on the front page about a woman who ran a clinic that did this for years. And I'm even more deeply disturbed and asked the Democratic Party to do some soul searching when the House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi instead wants to go after the people who took the video rather than investigate why we are degenerating into a culture that sells baby parts. So more than federal law, the question is just culturally, we need to be better than this.
Thank you, Nicolee. Elbridge James, your parting shot.
My parting shot has to do with Black Lives Matter. It is not just a symbol that needs to go past. It needs to be one that needs to be endeared to all persons in this country so that in fact we can have African American youth and youth of color believe they have a role and a place in this country and that they can succeed and that everyone should be able to give them a chance. Some things that our youth do, whether they're black or they're white, nowadays are criminalized versus saying, I need you to think about this, I need to give you a better chance. And for African American youth, I really need them because they are my future. I need them to have a second chance.
Thank you, Elbridge. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
I love the new campaign by Friends of White Flint to court Marriott and take them to the Pike. And the billboards, the press conference, the social media campaign, I'm all for it. I really think that's where Marriott needs to go. On the Pike, which used to be called, we used to call it White Flint, now it's been renamed the Pike. So I'm all for it, and I'm hoping that in 2016, 2017, Marriott comes out and says, we're going to the Pike.
Thank you. And Robin Uncapher, your parting shot.
Well, in addition to the issue of having Confederate statues, I really encourage the parents who are watching this to open up the history books that they have, which come from the Montgomery County Public Schools. As somebody who came from the north, I can tell you that Montgomery County Public Schools have a lot to do about their history books. Okay.
Well, thank you, Robin. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, it's okay.
But we're running out of time. I want to thank the panel for being here tonight. It was a great topic, and on a hot, steamy summer night, we had a great fun doing this. Thank the audience for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken, and remember, you can follow us on
Twitter.
Thank you. And you can like us on Facebook. I won't get that.